This is Andrew Stotz of Stotz Investment Research talking to you about Porter's 5 Forces analysis. I've been reading the 2 books you see in my hand in that picture, and also a bunch of other books on strategy. These books and the Porter 5 Forces remind me how powerful Porter 5 Forces is. So let's go into it and understand what he's talking about. Michael E. Porter's 5 Forces analysis is a framework for understanding the degree of competition in an industry. If the forces are strong, it will drive down industry profitability. Porter measures profitability as ROIC, return on invested capital. Now, the 5 Forces acknowledges that a company operates within a system of suppliers, customers, and, of course, existing competitors. In addition to that, there's always the threat of new entrants and, in some cases, substitutes. This is my diagram of how it works. The first central part of that we can see is that it's the rivalry amongst the competitors. And the company that I'm always looking at is in the middle of that. So I'm not looking at it in the case that I'm going to show you in the way I talk about it. I look at the 5 Forces by looking at the existing company that I am analyzing from a stock selection perspective. Now, that could be different from a management consultant who is advising a company, should you enter this industry? No, the way I look at it as a stock picker is to say, what industry is this company operating in, and what are the forces operating on that company from all of the different factors and areas within the industry. So we have the relationship with the suppliers, the relationship with the customers, and then the rivalry amongst competitors. Outside of that, we could have new entrants, and then in some cases, substitutes. So let's go through this and look at it. First, suppliers' bargaining power is the first thing you want to think about. Powerful suppliers of the inputs to the company, we're talking about the raw materials, services, labor, even labor unions, may make an industry less attractive as they drive up prices and capture more of the industry profits. So powerful suppliers can be painful for the company that I'm analyzing. Now, a strong yes, these are the questions that I've come up. A strong yes answer to the following questions would imply strong supplier bargaining power, making the industry relatively unattractive. So going through what Porter asks and what's also explained in Magretta 2011, which is this book right here, an excellent book to explain Porter's 5 Forces in a simple and easy to use format. Here's some examples of questions I took from those different sources and then tried to hone them down. The first question is, do the suppliers have strong control of inputs that the company needs? The raw materials. Well, if the answer to that is yes, then the industry could be unattractive for the company. Are there just 1 or 2 suppliers, or is the industry fragmented? In other words, there's many suppliers, and therefore, if there's 1 or 2, your answer is yes, then it could be an unattractive industry for the company in the middle. Another one is, are the inputs the company needs unique rather than commodity items? If they're unique, then their reliance on the supplier is pretty strong, and that could make the industry unattractive. Now let's talk a little bit about, always remember when I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking perspective of the company that I'm analyzing within this whole ecosystem. So now let's look at that company's relationship with its customers. So the customer's bargaining power is the next issue. Powerful customers can force companies to reduce prices, which can make an industry less attractive since the customers are able to make more or take more of the industry's profit. Really, what you can learn from Porter's 5 Forces is that there's a certain amount of profit up for grabs in most industries, and in his model, the real question is who gets the bulk of that profit. And so here we're going to ask, do the customers get that by having strong bargaining power? So a strong yes answer to the following questions would imply strong customer bargaining power, making the industry relatively unattractive. So let's go through some of those questions. Do the customers have many alternatives? If your customers have many alternatives, you're in trouble. It could make the industry unattractive. Can the customers put pressure on the supplying companies? If they can pressure you and you're analyzing a company in the middle, that could be weak power for the company in the middle, strong power for the customer. Are the customer switching costs low? Is it easy to just jump from one supplier to the other? If that's the case, then the industry may be unattractive for the company that I'm analyzing in the middle. Now let's talk about the threat of new entrants. A profitable industry attracts new competitors, and by adding supply or a differentiated option, new competitors can drive down profits. Yes, so these new entrants can be a risk. If the threat of these new competitors is high, then the industry could be less attractive. So a strong yes answer to the following questions would imply a strong threat of new entrants, making the industry relatively unattractive. So first question, is it easy for any company to enter the industry? That would make it an unattractive industry. Are there few intellectual property or knowledge in industry entry barriers, patents, secrets, things like that, or is it pretty simple to get in, right? Maybe you could look at a restaurant industry as an example, that it may not take much. Now, it takes a lot to make a successful restaurant, but you could have 5 new entrants into an industry very quickly. Now, can the company get access to the inputs? Could any company get access to the inputs of the process? So if the industry is, let's say, the restaurant industry, can the new entrants get access to the raw materials? Well, if they couldn't get access to the wines for, imported wines or something like that, then it may be a problem. But restaurants are a great example where the threat of new entrants is very high, and therefore the industry can be unattractive. The next question is, what is the threat of substitutes? Now, substitute products are not direct rivals, but can closely meet the needs of the customers. So they can reduce the power an incumbent company or an existing company has to raise prices and take profits from the industry. An example would be like taking a plane versus a train from one city to another. If we talk about direct competition, well, that's other airlines. If we talk about new entrants, well, if there was a low-cost airline coming in, that would be a new entrant with a different proposition. But in this case, a train between 2 cities is a substitute. For me, I travel a lot in China, and I have found that I enjoy the trains, for instance, between Shanghai and Beijing, as an example, more than I enjoy the travel hassle of flying from Shanghai to Beijing. So that's an example of a substitute. Now, a strong yes answer to the following questions would imply a strong threat of substitutes, making the industry relatively unattractive. So let's look at some questions. Is it easy for the customer to interchange one product for another that does pretty much the same thing? Are the cost of switching, so interchanging is one thing, but are the cost of switching high or low? If the cost of switching is low, it means you can just jump from one supplier to another, no problem. But part of what a lot of companies try to do is make the cost of switching high. In other words, making the product what we call sticky. Now, the next question is there little perceived difference in products? If the clients and the customers don't see any difference, then very, very difficult. Some people fly on airlines and it doesn't matter to them what airline it is. But if you say, okay, the low-cost airline versus a full-service airline, you may start to notice a pretty big difference. But is there little perceived difference? Well, for me, I see that taking a substitute on a train versus a plane as a really fantastic alternative. The next question is the rivalry among competitors. How brutal is the competition? Is it bloody? If existing companies are already competing intensely, then this could drive down prices or make competing costlier. This would make the industry unattractive. Remember, Porter says unattractive is the ROIC of the industry. Now, a strong yes answer to the following questions would imply a rivalry amongst competitors, making a strong rivalry, making the industry relatively unattractive. So some of the questions are there many competitors of roughly equal size? That can mean tough competition. Is it a slow growth industry? If that's the case, it's just tough to get any growth. Are some competitors irrationally committed to the business? Particularly in Asia, we have a lot of state-owned enterprises and companies that may be funded by the government and therefore have very different objectives from the other competitors. And are there high barriers to exit, like you can't get rid of these assets or that type of thing, right? So let's finally review what I talked about in this original diagram. We have the main issues are your suppliers and your customers. When you're analyzing a company in the middle, you're also looking at the rivalry amongst these competitors. And then finally, we look at new entrants and substitutes. The point about Porter's 5 forces model is compared to, say, SWOT analysis. After studying Porter in a little bit more detail, I can say that a SWOT analysis to me is more of a brainstorming, whereas Porter's 5 forces is trying to understand the attractiveness of an industry and measuring that through ROIC. I hope you learned as much as I did by reviewing these points within the books. Have a great day.